Hello, Peekers. Welcome back to Plot Peek. I am Miranda.
And I'm Mackenzie, and this is your one-stop shop for storytelling.
Tea spilling.
And to keep up with all the latest book talk drama that you have been missing out on. Slay.
Do we have any life updates?
I do think I have a brain tumor currently.
That is a big one.
Yeah, but also, as we said in the last episode, I am raw dogging life. So I'm trying to rein it back in, be rational.
Meanwhile, I'm like, you should go to the ER.
Yeah, Miranda's, I'm telling her about it, and she's like, you know what you should do? You should go straight to the emergency room. Terrible.
I'm all for fixing the things that make you upset and worried, so why not just go to the source?
You said delusions? Let's feed into them.
No, yeah, they're here for a reason, am I right? Sometimes they really pay off. Am I right?
One of these days, I am going to have some kind of paranoid fear, and I'm going to be so used to talking myself down that I'm going to be like, it's fine. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong. And that'll be the time that it takes me out.
No, that's what I'm always afraid of. That's why whenever you or anybody else comes up to me, I'm like, yeah, that's a valid, I'm never going to be one to be like, no, that's not happening. I would be like, that could be happening.
You're not wrong.
It's like, I wish I could say you're wrong, but I don't know for sure until we get it checked out. So don't want to lie to you.
Any life updates with you?
Colby turned 30, and I think his old age is rubbing off on my joints because now I've woken up with a sore elbow, and I do think it's because I was too close to him.
Interesting. Okay. I'm so sorry. My condolences.
Thank you so much. I do need that because I will talk about it constantly to whoever's listening.
Well, I did take some, I don't know if you've heard of it, ibuprofen this morning for my head. Right. And I can feel it starting to get better right now. So
maybe I need
you
to
should try it.
Should I just start doing baby aspirins
I think you should just go with some ibuprofen.
Oh, okay.
Probably.
Okay. Well, yeah, maybe I'll do that after this episode. Maybe. All right. Well, before we get started, let's go ahead and do a quick recap and remind you guys that this episode will be covering Sarah J. Maas's Heir of Fire, chapters 31 through 39. So if you are reading along and you have not gotten to this part yet, this is your warning. We will be storytelling everything that happens up to and through these chapters. And with all of that being said, let's do a quick recap of everything that's happened so far. Celaena ran away from the fortress because Rowan was being a biting asshole. And during her camping, she woke up to 3 skinwalkers tracking her. Long story short, Rowan showed up and put out her fires, and they're trying to figure out what kind of creature is killing all the demi-fae. Dorian finally finds out that everybody's been lying to him and is rightfully pissed off, but on the bright side, he and Sorsha have finally sealed the deal on their relationship with a passionate kiss in the hallway. Aiden and Chaol are becoming besties low-key, and we learn that the rebels believe a big spell was being used to create a triangle around the areas where magic was vanished. And Manon, in a surprise turn of events, did not get Titus as her wyvern. Instead, she claimed Abraxos, the oldest bait wyvern in the camp, the underdog. Did I miss anything else?
No, things are just really getting started.
Things are happening now. Things just keep happening, and it's getting real. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into the story time. Since Celaena has learned how to shift on command and not combust immediately, her new training task is to light a candle without melting it. And as you'd expect, it is not going great. She's still showing up to Emery's story times where he spilled a little bit of tea suggesting that Maeve's own sisters gave up their immortality to escape a lifetime with her. And I also have an interesting note on this. In Celaena's POV, we've been seeing she's painting Maeve more and more like a monster, which is also how she views the king. So that, for me, is solidifying that we are not going to be liking Queen Maeve.
She's not giving good vibes right now. She's really not. I can't say for sure, but she's really not giving good vibes right now.
From the things that I've been picking up from everybody around, it's giving bad vibes, yeah, for sure. And we definitely delve more into this. So Stay tuned. During another one of Emery's story time, Celaena sees one of Rowan's mysterious friends show up and go to Rowan's room. And she does think for half a second that maybe she shouldn't follow, because what if they were more than just friends? What if they wanted some privacy? But she's a nosy queen, so she pretends to come in and offer them food, only to see that Rowan's friend is now shirtless because Rowan is giving him a tattoo. But immediately she can tell that this was an invasion of a very sensitive moment, and she was so humiliated when Rowan told her to get the fuck out. She was like, stupid, 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 stupid. And then Rowan, he's like pissed the fuck off, stalks out after her. And she's like, listen, why don't you just hit me in the face again instead of being mean to me? I just wanted to see where you went. You left me. And Rowan responds with, I don't care about you. You are nothing to me. Why is he being so mean to this girl? Like, he literally, for no reason, is just so aggressive.
I know wasn't even doing anything mean to sure she was being nosy, but she literally was bringing them food. She was like, hi, guys, what's up? And he's like, I wish you were dead.
No, seriously. And I'm like, this is so uncalled for. Like, for real, I don't like it. Me.
It's really sad for her. She has nobody.
Yeah, and then that basically sends her into another depression episode, because the next morning she comes out and she's thinking that she was bonding with Rowan this whole time. And then all of a sudden he tells her that she's a piece of shit again. And then so while she's in the kitchen with Emery, he's going on and on about this new gift that his mate gave him and that he loves so much. And Celaena is just festering right now. And she eventually blows up on all of them. And she's like, basically, go eat a bag of dicks, essentially. And while she runs out of the kitchen, Rowan comes in a little bit later looking for her to start their training. And that's when Emery gives it to Rowan straight. He tells Rowan he knows who Celaena really is because he used to work with her mother when she was volunteering here at this very fortress fighting for the demi-fae rights. And then he tells Rowan that he's being a toxic asshole and destroying the one person who holds the hope to bringing a better world. And he actually says a quote that I did post on our Instagram page that I feel perfectly describes how delicate even the strongest people may be. Quote, I see her slipping away bit by bit because you shove her down when she so desperately needs somebody to help her back up.
Oh, that gives me like chills and like tears. It's so true. She is just looking for someone to help her. Like, she really is looking for anyone to give her like a sliver of humanity, and he's just shoving her down and down and down.
Yeah, so and sad. It's not even just that too. It's like she's looking for somebody to view her different from herself, because she is her own like biggest enemy right now in her head. She's like, I deserve everything. Nobody should love me. I don't deserve to be here trying to help save anybody. And this guy right here is telling me everything that I already know. So it's like she's eating up what he's saying, and it's just making her worse, like he said.
Poor baby.
After Emery's speech, Rowan goes after Celaena in a more gentle manner, only to find her mumbling and crying to herself on her knees at the edge of a hill. And in her POV, during this moment, she's actually talking to the distant voice of her mother, who's calling her Fireheart. And when she notices Rowan is there, he asks if she wants to talk about it. And obviously she says no, because he's just a mean asshole to her all the time. And they go on to start their next training exercise. And this involved him bringing her to this big frozen lake cave. And on it was a blanket and Luca.
No.
Luca was chained to the frozen lake with his chains frozen through the lake itself. So that's how he was stuck out there. Meaning Rowan did this. To make a long story short, Rowan tricked Lucas to help Celaena train without knowing all the risks, aka that she would likely set him on fire. But luckily, Luca is too oblivious to this danger and very fixated on just how hungry he is. Rowan knows that Celaena lets fear control a lot of her right now, so if he can get her to practice control and with it that way, maybe it'll be a good place to start. Which honestly, it is a really great incentive to practice self-control. Because if she does lose control, like we said, she's going to risk melting him, setting him on fire, or putting a hole in the lake and sending him down to drown.
I think it's also really interesting to note, too, that at this point, there had been like lots of little whispered conversations, and Emerus is the only one that had said that he knows who Celaena is / who Aelin is. So everyone else, they know she's like some kind of demi-fae, but they've never seen her shift. They've talked about like different powers and things like that other demi-fae have. And, they're kind of like, listen, like the people that are getting in close to Queen Maeve, those are the ones that have like the big powers like fire or ice or wind or, you know, like being able to control the earth and stuff like that. And they were like, yeah, none of us have anything like cool or whatever. So nobody has seen her powers other than Rowan. Nobody knows what kind of powers she has. So she also is kind of having to reveal herself a little bit in this moment to Luca, who she's been becoming like kind of casual friends with, if she wants to save him.
Yeah, I actually didn't even put that together either. So that's interesting. That's a good little point to point out.
Team. I'm doing my part.
You did do your part. Thank you so much for that. Salutes. So she starts burning through this ice holding his chains, and after much concentration, she gets through. However, things take a turn because once Luca was out and the chains were gone, Celaena sees a giant red eyeball staring right back at her. Obviously, the two of them start running back to shore as Rowan is using his powers to keep the lake frozen. He slides Celaena the special sword that he just happened to find, and we'll talk about that later. She grabs it when a long tail breaks out of the ice, sending her flying. All she can think about is trying to get Luca to safety, so she grabs him by the elbow and then she starts hauling his ass over to the shore. And Rowan is just trying to focus all of his power to make this one long, solid bridge of ice so they can make it to safety. They finally reach solid ground. They sprint out of the cave, down the mountain to the fortress, and after a short time, they hear this loud-ass roar from the creature and assumed that it was stopped from the bright light that it reached outside.
That is so horrifying. First of all, can you imagine being in this like little training exercise? Even for Luca too. He's just like, sure, I'll help, buddy. And he's like, when are we going to dinner? And then there's a sea monster like coming after you.
No, I would be so terrified. And like, did he not know that there was monsters in this lake beforehand? Like, I feel like it would be kind of suspectful for a creature to be lurking in a cave like that.
In his like POV, he was like, I had no idea there was anything in there. That is crazy.
This is news to me. He's like, you made it through. That was great.
Good job. You did it. Go team.
So when they're finally out there at the safety and they realize that the monster's not going to go get them, Celaena tells Luca, go ahead, run back to the fort so I can talk to Rowan alone. And when I say talking, I mean beat the shit out of him. Because as soon as they're alone, she punches him right in the face. They start tussling. She brings him down, straddles him, and punches the living hell out of his face. And while she's beating the shit out of him, he's just laying there as if he's accepting this beating. And she's yelling. She's like, if you ever put someone else in danger like you just did to Luca, I will kill you. And Rowan says through the punches, why, Aelin? Which triggers her even more. She grabs his wrists as hard as she can and she shoves them to the ground. Her anger turns into word vomit and she lets everything that she's been holding in out. The pain she felt from Nehemiah lying to her and then arranging her own death because Celaena was too afraid to take a stand. And the hate that she has now grown for Nehemiah. Another person who died for her because she was too afraid to face who she really is.
That is so sad. I feel like she's been holding in, like you said, so much self-hatred and so much guilt for all the things that have happened when a lot of this really was out of her control. She literally feels to blame for everything.
I feel like I hate seeing it, but I totally understand how she does feel that because she is supposed to be this protector. Like, technically, she should be the queen of this kingdom and protecting and like standing up against the king, but she's been afraid and hiding. So it's like, I do see how she does feel like this is kind of all because of her. But at the end of the day, she's not the villain. She's not the one making all these things happen. It's definitely other people with their own agendas. So,
yeah. And like we've said, I mean, yeah, sure. She is supposed to be a queen, a protector, all these things. But like, she's barely an adult, you know, like she's barely had time to even process what happened to her entire upbringing. And then now is being like thrust back into this life. I feel like she can't have so much. She can't be so hard on herself. But of course, like I
easier said than
understand too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They roll off of each other and talk more about Nehemiah's death and what she did when she found the murderer. Celaena's preparing for this scolding on how she handled Grave and Archer's death, but Rowan only praises her and says, never apologize for defending the people you care about. When they get back to the fort, Celaena drops to her knees to apologize to Emery and Malachi, Malachi's his mate, for being a bitch this morning. And they talk about this creature in the cave and how legend says it came from another world and has not been able to leave since. Long ago, a fierce Fey warrior had come to kill it, but the only detail of this Fey warrior was the ring it bore, and which was described oddly similar to the red ruby ring that had fallen from the sword that Rowan slid to Celaena. So my question is, do we need to be paying attention to the sword / the ruby or jewel, whatever it is?
Who could know? I don't know.
All right, so that's a yes. The other thing I didn't mention is the cave that they were practicing in was filled with a bunch of old weapons and jewels and stuff like that from previous warriors who had tried to come and kill this creature, I guess, or something like that. Mm-hmm. So that's why I was like, did he not know that there was a spooky creature in there with like all this evidence of dead people and old weapons discarded? And he found this specific sword hidden away somewhere. So it wasn't just like lying around. It was like tucked away behind something, and he just happened to pick this one up. And yeah, so I'm just like, this seems really interesting. We will be keeping an eye out on that then. Celaena feels bad later on that night because she noticed when she was gripping Rowan's wrist during their fight that she had actually burned him. So she brings him some extra healing salve as an attempt to apologize, and he's like, no, I deserved it. I was being unhinged. And then he tells her his lore, and we learn why he is the way that he is. He had a mate named Lyria long ago, and in his story, she died because of him. He was young, and his biggest dream was to become a famous warrior, so he joined Queen Maeve's legion. And when he was off campaigning for Queen Maeve, he met his mate, Lyria, selling flowers at a village market. But Maeve didn't think that Lyria had enough class to stay in the castle. So Rowan took a step away from campaigning for Maeve to be with his mate outside of the castle. But when the war started, Maeve had called for him again. And since he was still young and eager to prove himself as a fierce warrior, he went. He left Lyria. And after being gone briefly, he got word that enemies were closing in on his home border. So Rowan said that he raced back to help protect her, but when he got there, it was too late. The enemy had burned her home, burned her to ashes, and when he found her body, he discovered that she had been with child. And after a closer look, he realized that she had been pregnant since before he left. And he was just too focused on himself and his potential glory that he didn't scent it before. So that's why he's given himself these tattoos in the old Fae language, so he can be reminded of his mistakes forever, for leaving his mate. And it tells her story. And after all of that, he spent many years in his animal state out of shame, and he wanted to die. And the only reason he didn't die was due to his animal instincts to fight and survive. After a few years, Maeve found him and asked him to rejoin her legion. He did, and he swore a blood oath to her in the secret hope that he would die quickly on the fields of battle. So Rowan apologizes to Celaena for his behavior, and they make this pact to be on each other's sides from here on out, aka calling it truce from trying to trigger each other constantly.
I feel like that does explain a lot of like his anger. However, I don't know why it was so heavily directed at her.
That's my biggest thing. I'm like, that does make sense, but on one hand, you're immortal. I don't know how long ago this lasts, and I know that mates' bonds are very deep, so it's like I can see that being painful still. But the fact, like what you said, he's really directing a lot of this anger to her and not everybody. Like, he's mean to everybody else, but he's like really going after Celaena. I don't feel like that's still an equal reason to be treating people like that.
I wonder if she like reminds him of his mate in some way, like reminds him of like her personality or her, like the way she looked or something. And he like can't stand to look at her.
Ooh, that's a good thought.
And obviously he's having to be in such close proximity to her all the time. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just a thought. But also I think it's fair to mention too, because someone in this podcast, one of the two of us kept saying, you were like, they've got to be mates. They've got to be mates. I think Celaena or Aelin did talk a little bit about this. She was like, oh, well, he had a mate. And so like, I guess he'll never have one again type thing. Mm-hmm. And so I do think it's fair to mention that you only get one mate. So you were wrong, idiot.
Yeah.
Just
They
kidding.
still do give very, and we talk about this too, so they still give mate vibes. So there's something going on.
They do give mate vibes, but I do think we'll talk about something that we can talk a little bit about later.
Talk about something that we can
that
talk
could
about.
Potentially connect them outside of a mating bond. Tea.
So Celaena / Aelin, and I feel like I have to keep calling her Celaena right now because she does not want to be Aelin, and she's made it very clear in her POV that she feels safer and more hopeful for her life as Celaena. So Celaena and Rowan have another conversation, and this time it's about her family while she's redoing the tattoo that she melted off of him. She tells him why she's afraid to be queen like Maeve wants her to be. She doesn't want to be another pair of shackles to people like all the other rulers, and she doesn't know if she's going to be a good queen. She gets sad about her role in this world, and she questions why she's even still here training with him. And Rowan does the classic chin grab with the heavy eye contact move. They have a moment together, and he tells her that while he's trying to figure out what they're going to be for each other, he wants her to talk about whatever she needs so he can better understand her. So goodbye, Chaol, and hello, new love interest, am I right? So we just got all the exes out of the way. Let's start a new relationship, but he is toxic.
I'm so sorry, but if somebody grabs my chin and forces me to look at them, it's over. I mean,
has anybody ever done that to you?
Yes.
Whenever I told Colby about these things, he started doing that more. And honestly, it makes me really scared whenever they do. I'm like, oh God, don't look at me so.
I mean, it can't be aggressive, but
no,
I can't even tell the story. It's not appropriate for.
How are we ever going to get into smut if you can't talk about your life?
But if we get into smut, we're not talking about my life. This isn't Call Her Daddy. It's
micro peek or time, right? Micro peek? What's the story? Micro peek.
If somebody's grabbing my chin or my neck or something like that and like forcing me to look at them, it's got to be during an intimate moment.
Right.
Where it's like, look at me.
Wait, but during an intimate moment, I imagine that being such a slow thing. The way you're saying it. I feel like in an intimate moment, you said it can't be aggressive, but I feel like it wouldn't have to be aggressive during an intimate moment.
I guess you would have just had to be there. I don't know. How
next time, it to just FaceTime me.
Next time I'll let you know. I'll be like, can we do this again for the camera? Thank you.
Yeah, that would be much more appreciated because I need to see. I'm a visual.
You're a visual learner. I think that's totally fair. The next time I have an experience, we're single girlies out here, but the next time I have an experience, I'll make sure that the person is okay with documenting everything, and I will send it directly to you.
Can we share it to the page so everybody else can see what you're talking about?
So if you submit a bookish battle, I will consider sending a part of it to you.
That's a really good incentive.
@gmail.com. Thank you so much.
That's a really good incentive if I've ever heard one.
Not like promoting like prostitution. I'm like, you will get payment for services rendered.
So funny. When we're literally just begging for stories, we're like, I will send you my
nudes.
Forget the $20. You're getting full video, 4K.
Just email at the bottom of the bookish battle your preference, and we'll try to abide by that. Thank you.
All right. So moving on to Manon and Abraxos at the Gap. Abraxos is definitely different from the other wyverns. And as Manon is trying to feed and train Abraxos, she is picking up on his little personality. She learns that he loves flowers, and just like her, he is sus about the camp's food. He has made it very clear that he would rather eat the plants than eat the meat that they serve. She actually tries a piece of his meat and she spits it out immediately, understanding why he wouldn't take it. And just like the men's blood here, it tastes off. Not sour, but wrong. So since Abraxos is refusing to eat the meat from the camp, Manon has to go hunting. She sees some mountain goats nearby, tackles one to the ground. Yeah, Manon is so cool she can hunt goats for her pet wyvern. But Sarah J. Maas knows how to keep characters humble. And for Manon in this situation, she felt it would be a good time to do so. And she had the goat that Manon tackled drop a fresh dump right on her as they fell. Amen. Keeping people humble every day.
Amen. I mean, I do feel that As big of an ego as Manon has, it might be good for her to be knocked down a peg every now and then.
Yeah, and I feel like this is a fair humbling. Like, it's nothing like super harmful, but it's like, check yourself.
You said,
Remember
well,
your
that's
place.
Embarrassing.
Yeah. And Abraxos was very appreciative of the sacrifice, but Manon's grandma was not pleased. And after she saw her come in covered in goat shit, she tells Manon that she has until tomorrow to be flying with the bait wyvern or die. So Manon takes Abraxos back out to see if he can do anything off of this baby cliff since he's never flown before. And he's pretending that he can't hear her as she's explaining what she's trying to do. And she's like, you know what? Fine. You asked for this. She runs and jumps on his mount, and immediately he starts panicking and bucking towards the opposite side of the baby cliff to the end that would send them to their death if he's unable to fly, because at the bottom of this side cliff are tall, jagged rocks pointing straight up. So this is a terrifying moment that gets even more terrifying when Abraxos falls off that scary side cliff, leaving Manon with no choice but to go off with him. They're falling. It's chaos. Manon is picturing all the ways she could possibly die with Abraxos. Abraxos is spinning, tumbling, all the way down the steep fall, and Manon is yelling at him. She yells at him to open his wings to try. And finally, he does. And then they soar. Manon is seeing for the first time how the lights have turned on for Abraxos after years of being chained and beaten and crippled. He's finally free in the air with unyielding joy. He gets so high in the air, and with no one watching, Manon flings her arms open, embracing the joy of the free fall with Abraxos. And reading this part, it makes me feel like it's a little bit of foreshadowing of Manon growing to sympathize with the captive beings. Perhaps leaving the king to team up with Celaena?
I don't know. Who could know?
I think you do know, actually. That's the thing.
I think that Manon has a lot more of a soft spot in her heart than she is willing or wants to admit.
Yes, that's definitely how I feel as well. She still is scary.
So scary. She still, I mean, she may have a soft spot, but she also still loves to kill men for sport. So
yeah, take that with a grain of salt.
Take it as you will.
So when Manon returns to camp, she tells her 13 that they will now be training as a complete unit with their wyverns. No matter what, even if the wyverns are wild and trying to challenge for dominance, they're going to train and they're going to ride as a complete unit until the war games. But before that, Abraxos still has to pass his flying test to prove that he's war ready. And like the others, he's going to have to jump off that big cliff at Farron's Gap and withstand the winds from snapping his wings and fly all the way out of the gap in one go. And because Abraxos is a bait wyvern, his wings are fucked up. So Manon is like, this is not going to do. We need to go find some spider silk to reinforce your wings. They sneak out of the camp and go search for the legendary Stygian spiders who make the spider silk. And it's a long flight, so they have to camp through this cold, rainy storm on the mountainside. And during this little camping session, Abraxos is such a sweet little baby, and he shields Manon with his wings while they're sleeping. And I have to say, I'm leaving a lot of stuff out about Abraxos, but I want you guys to basically imagine toothless whenever we talk about Abraxos. That is all I can think of whenever I hear Abraxos' personality.
Toothless from How to Train Your Dragon.
Yes, I'm obsessed. And I'm going to be posting some TikToks that I've been finding about Abraxos because it's just so funny. I love it.
Yeah, no, the pictures of wyverns are so terrifying. But the whole time I was reading this, I was picturing Toothless from How to Train Your Dragon. He's just like a sweet little baby. Like, he loves flowers. He's kind of a sensitive boy. He's got a little bit of an attitude. He likes to talk back, but he loves Manon so much. And yeah, he's just so cute. He's like a kind of like a little mother hen in the most precious way.
Yeah, he is. He's a good boy, and I love him. So,
for anyone who doesn't remember from Assassin's Blade, when we talked about spider silk, the spider silk is a type of material that it looks very silky. It's made by these Stygian spiders, and it's supposed to be as strong as steel. Like, nothing can penetrate this material. So the reason she wants to get it for Abraxos is because it is the most powerful type of fabric, material, whatever, on this earth that could withstand anything. It could withstand battle. It could be even stronger than his original wings because it is so strong and powerful. And if you guys remember, Celaena had placed a small sliver of it over her and Sam's heart in their material whenever Arabin had made them new uniforms. So just to bring that full circle.
Yeah. So the next day, they fly over the area where all the spiders seem to live, and Manon can see all the various webs and trees moving with the spiders crawling. So nasty. They find the cave of the Stygian spider by evidence by the dead bones surrounding the cave. And Manon gets greeted by this huge, ethereal-looking monster spider who can talk. The spider hears Manon's request for a lot of silk and is like, let me have my minions go fetch 10 yards of my latest woven bolts. And while they're off, the spider ponders what she would want in exchange because, you got to give them some quality like life years, or what was the other one?
Basically, she's trying to barter with the spider, and the spider's like, maybe I'll take your beauty. I would love to have that. Or maybe I'll take a bunch of years off your life, but I feel that I want something more. And she's really trying to barter with her, but the spiders really only take something of immeasurable value. They don't want money. They don't want anything like that. They want something that is irreplaceable.
Yeah. And like you said, the spider's like, maybe I'll take your beauty because I want to be with a man of my own. And Manon is like, oh, okay, cool, yeah. And Abraxos is not having it. This whole time, he's growling at the spider, getting tense, and slowly getting more protective coverage over Manon as the giant spider slowly inches closer. And when the minions return with the woven bolts, Manon is inspecting it and tells the spider that there's an imperfection in it. And that causes the queen spider to get into a little bit of a fuss. Her and her minions crawl close enough to Manon that Abraxos puts his tail between them as like a little barrier. And Manon is like, oh, wait, that was my mistake. There's no imperfections, but I don't really feel like bargaining anymore. And right as she said that last word, Abraxos straightens his tail, pushing the Spider Queen and her minions right off the edge of the cliff. And apparently that had been Manon's plan this whole time, which she made that way easier than I expected it to be. I was like, surely something else has got to happen because that was way too easy for her to get all that spider silk.
Yeah, no, when I was reading that, I was like, that seems a little bit easy, but whatever. I guess she is a scary witch.
Yeah, I was like, a win's a win, I guess. Huh?
So Manon is talking to the spider, and basically she's like, the spider's like, why do you want this spider silk? And she's telling him about Abraxos' wings, that Abraxos is a gift from the king, and that after they're done fighting, they're going to go back home to the Western Wastes and reclaim their kingdom. I'm going to read from here on out. The spider says, is the curse broken? And Manon says, not yet, but when we find the Croken who can undo it, she would enjoy that bloodletting. Then the spider responds, such a delightfully nasty curse. You won the land only for the cunning Crokens to curse it beyond use. Have you seen the waste these days? Manon says, no, I haven't. And the spider responds, a merchant came by a few years ago. He told me there was a mortal high king who had set himself up there, but I heard a whisper on the wind recently that said he'd been disposed by a young woman with wine red hair who now calls herself their high queen. So a young woman with wine red hair who now calls herself their high queen. If we remember, when Ansel was leaving, she said she was going to go back to the Western Wastes and reclaim her home from the man who had the high king who had taken it. So if this is true and this whisper is true, then Ansel did make it back to the Western Wastes. And I don't think, if it's mentioned in Assassin's Blade and it's also mentioned here, I don't think that's a coincidence. And I don't think that's the last we'll be hearing of it.
Yeah, actually, I did pick that part up. I was kind of like, is she talking about the same people that I think she's talking about?
She could be.
Yeah, but it does sound an awful lot like Ansel. And I was like, that was such a unique piece of side information that she just pointed out. She was like, oh, this redhead girl is now the queen.
Yeah, but in Assassin's Blade, they constantly described Ansel as a woman with wine red hair. And I think that is just very specific wording.
Thank you for that. Manon doesn't tell anybody about their little journey to the spiders or about Abraxos' subtle new glow in his wings. She also has so much spider silk left over for future repairs that she doesn't want anyone to know about it. So Manon attempts to get Abraxos to do the Northern Fang cliff diving test, the final test that he has to do. But again, Abraxos is not having it. He is refusing to go, to the point that Manon is like, fine, you want to be a piece of shit? Then go sit like a piece of shit. And she orders him to be taken away to some dark, decrepit pen below. But all the witches were here watching this go down, and that included Iskra. So guess what this bitch does? She riles Manon up. Loud enough for everyone to hear, she goes up and she says, maybe your mount just needs a little bit of discipline, and begins to whip him. While her goal to rile Manon up works, she stops dead in her tracks to the sound of Abraxos' scream after the whip cracks. She sees him curled against the wall with a cut super close to his eye, and before anyone has the chance to stop her, Manon is running for Iskra. They both get a couple good blows in until Manon gets her knee on Iskra's chest and wails the shit out of her face until her third pulls her off. And I'm not mad about Iskra getting beat up, but poor baby Abraxos.
It literally makes me want to cry. It makes me think of like a sweet little dog just getting beat for being scared or something. Oh, I'm going to start crying. When I was reading this book, I was like, this is so difficult to read.
Yeah, it was hard because I thought that Abraxos was more so just being stubborn and didn't want to do it because he's an animal. But I'm seeing more and more like context of him being like, I have never flown before. I've been nothing but like damaged and beat up. I don't think I can do this. Like, he's scared for himself rather than just being like really stubborn, you know? So it's like.
Yeah. Well, and that's how they used to punish him too. They used to whip him and beat him. And so he's like, oh, I just feel like poor baby's getting like triggered and scared. It makes me literally want to start sobbing.
So Manon gets punished by her grandma for losing control, and then she goes to visit Abraxos. And while she's in his pen, Petra, the blue blood heir, stops by to tell Manon that her wyvern, Keely, had caught a goat for Abraxos. And Manon's like, this seems a little sus, and then she wants to get a little bit more clarification on something that Petra had said. She asks, Keely said that she got that for Abraxos? Like, she talked? And Petra gives her this look, and she's like, yeah, doesn't yours? Which is tea, because Manon hasn't told anyone about her theory that these wyverns may comprehend more than what's believed. So, possible future ally?
Potentially. I'd say possibly. Who knows?
Could be something.
Who could know?
And then lastly, just some quick updates on our side characters. Chaol and Aiden, they're basically teammates at this point, and both are looking for the solution to free magic. And Chaol's priority is still to keep Dorian and Celaena safe, and Aiden's priority is to reunite with Aelin and restore her kingdom. Together, they've learned that there's these black towers in these locations where magic waves came from the day that magic vanished. But Chaol is realizing that the tower in Rifthold is likely the clock tower in the castle garden. But he doesn't want to tell anybody for some reason, because he is the king of denial and the king of secrets.
Literally, actually, fuck Chaol. Hate him so much. I do think it's really cool, though, to bring it all the way back to the clock tower. I remember in the first book, whenever we were talking about it, you were like, why does this stupid clock tower keep getting mentioned? You were like, what is the deal with this clock tower? You were like, it doesn't, like, it's ominous, but it doesn't really seem like anything. And I think it's just bringing it full circle. Things are starting to happen.
Things are happening, guys. And then I don't know if this is an important note, but Ren and Aiden did get into like this heated argument at one point because apparently the people really love Aiden and would respect him as a king, with Aelin as his queen. And he has no qualms with marrying his cousin, and apparently it's not a far-fetched thought for Aiden, but he stands by that his priority is just to have Aelin come home and reclaim her throne. So now I'm sitting here reading this wondering, and I'm like, is there going to be another love triangle between Aiden and Rowan and Celaena? I'm obsessed with love.
I really hope that this doesn't take the turn into Jamie and Cersei coded. That's
what I'm saying. I'm like picking it on my cousins again. Okay.
You said more cousins. No, but Aiden and Aelin are literally like, they're cousins. They grew up together. Yeah. They're literally like direct cousins. Whereas Rowan's
more distant.
He's far removed. Like would not even consider yourself family. Me and you might be cousins in the way that Aelin and Rowan are cousins.
Right.
Right.
And then you already brought up the Stygon Spider talking about Ansel, which I'm glad you did because I was having such a blank trying to remember her name for some reason. I was like, who is she talking about? I think it was good whenever you brought that up, but that was going to be my last point. So I'm going to jump to the end. So before we wrap up this story time, we want to remind you guys again that we do have our emails open for the Bookish Battle submission. So if you know of any crazy stories that's happened to you or someone you know, email them to us at plotpeakgirlies@gmail.com.
Yeah, guys, we really would like some stories. We are not going to stop begging. We will humble ourselves at your feet.
We're committed to the bit now.
Yes, we're committed. We are committed. And one day we're going to get a second story. We are going to be checking our emails and we're going to be like giddy, like, oh, we got an email.
It's going to be a really big moment for sure. We've been working very hard for this.
It is.
Begging,
if you don't mind, since we're getting so many emails at this time, please put like Bookish Battle or story time or something, in the subject line or in the beginning so we know how to filter it, just since we're getting so many,
And Peekers, that was the end of this week's plot. So next week, come back as we take a peek at Sarah J. Maas's Heir of Fire, chapters 40 through 49.
And be sure to follow us on TikTok and Instagram at plot.peak for all things plot peak and memes and hopefully drama that we can bring to you.
Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.